Welcome to the WealthStack podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Rosic, Director of WealthStack Content and Solutions. I'm joined today by Doug Fritz, CEO and founder of F2 Strategy. And the topic, the state of the CRM. That's a big one to unpack. So, Doug, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
I'd love to be here. Thanks for having me, Shannon.
Absolutely. And before we dive into the first segment, I want to start with your background. And I always joke that these are the really hard hitting questions to distill your life down into really an elevator pitch. So I'll hit you with the hardest question that you'll pretty much have this entire conversation. So if you wouldn't mind, just tell listeners, what makes Doug, well, Doug, and why you ultimately went the entrepreneur route after years of being a CTO.
Yeah, I get this question a lot. I think I've always been a problem solver. My parents would probably disagree that I was a problem creator early in my life, but I love solving complex problems. And I think having really grown up in the wealth and asset management market, always having roles between the business and the technology, the changes that were going on, it's like a candy store for someone that likes really big, complex problems upon which you have to know a lot of the detail to come out with the right answer, right? And so every turn in my career, there was always a spot where I went into the spots that had bigger problems yet unsolved, where people trying to solve them either didn't have my same detailed background or not my tenure in the industry. And so I always love that confluence of experience and just good old fashioned problem solving, dogmatic approaches. That was also my background. I think the start of the entrepreneurial Doug from the corporate employee Doug happened many years before we started F2. And it really came where I was having drinks with other CTOs and just talking about our industry and what we were working on. And the concept came up like, who do you work with for help? Who do you go to for helping out your firm and your approach? And we kind of went through the usual suspects of management consulting firms. And it was evident to all of us that most of the firms we had in our organization at the time were sort of learning our business while they were consulting to us. And there's definitely an art of management consulting, of asking good questions and helping people come up with a strategy. But it was kind of readily apparent to me and to many people that I just had my friends network that there ought to be a firm full of people that have actually done the transformation work from the inside and that could consult on the experience of having done it. And I think once I saw that, I couldn't not see it. You talk to entrepreneurs about like when they came up with their business idea, once they saw that it needed to be done, they woke up every morning and they couldn't not see that anymore. And so to me, it was, I knew this is where I was going to go many years before I started the company. But that's really why it was, and it's been fantastic. I get to literally help hundreds of wealth management clients solve complex issues, get ready for the future, and I get to surround myself with, now we're the largest pure play wealth tech consultancy in the country. Like I get to be surrounded by people who like to solve problems. It's like a dream job.
And the trajectory has been amazing. And you actually founded F2 with your wife, Liz. And I'm always impressed by couples that work together. I actually met my husband at work many, many years ago in Manhattan. So kind of similar. But talk to me about that journey. Surely that's been rewarding just on a personal and professional level.
Yeah. And Liz tells this story way better than I do. Full disclosure. But I literally called. I started the company, and she was working at. I was working at First Republic. She was working at Bank of the West, and both in wealth management. We grew up in wealth management. We met at Wells Fargo Private Bank, many hundreds of years ago, and so we just the wealth industry was always table talk for us before we even started the company. And so when I started it, I think I had a vision that having a husband-wife team was like ideal. We could have one set of one paycheck for the both of us, but we could watch the kids, we could be present as parents, but also get things going. And her skill sets were always marketing, communication, branding from her corporate work, and mine was always sort of technology and sort of internal strategy. So it just worked out really well that we would start a firm, do this, and help ourselves brand and market our firm together.
I love that. And to pivot back to our industry and speaking of relationships, I've heard you say before that proactive engagement is still missing when it comes to, the client advisor relationship. In your opinion, where are we as an industry? Where are things headed? And are you at least hopeful that tech can get us there?
Gosh, loaded question. So uh, we are in proactive communication and proactive relationships between a wealth management firm and or the advisor, because depending upon the firm type, it's the firm or the advisor that's connecting with the client. And that end client, like waking up in the morning when like she's drinking her coffee, like we do a really poor job as an industry for as amount of money as clients spend on having advice, on connecting with them on a real level. And I always, when I'm hanging out with a president of a wealth firm, I'm kind of talking about what does it mean to be great. I have them pull up their phone. If they have an iPhone, it's sort of like swipe down from the top and look at all the notifications on your phone from the different services and subscriptions things you spend money on. And there's like Yelp new restaurant review. I'm like literally looking at mine right now. And there's a new restaurant, new sushi restaurant in my neighborhood. Click here to go check it out. I've got things from Uber offering me 20% off my next ride or whatever. Like there's all this connection that happens between brands and investors, people. And we do generally a pretty poor job of connecting that. And so I'm hopeful, to answer your second part of your question, can technology get us there? Yeah, actually the technology to do that's around today, but most wealth firms lack the sort of thoughtfulness around how do they want clients to experience that brand and their messaging and their content on a daily basis. We build all of our infrastructure, tech tools, client experience around, two main areas. One, get ready for the client review. It's a quarterly, monthly meeting with the clients. It's performance. We've got tear sheets from the fund companies and separate account managers. We've got our economic outlooks. We've got this package story about what we think clients should care about. And then we've got maybe, if it's a good wealth firm, they've got a client digital experience where someone logs in. And it's basically a fancy looking version of I'm sounding incendiary here, but like it's a fancy digital statement. It's basically static. There's no engagement. I can go look at how much unrealized gain loss I had from my Coca-Cola stock that they bought for me 10 years ago, or like I can see how the SPY has performed over the last 3 quarters. It's just a statement. It's not really engagement, not the way that most people engage with other brands. So I think technology can hit people with focused content, educational material, get to know people that are like you, people that are, have recently sold a business and they're like you, and what are they doing with their money? Where are they putting it? Like, how do they think about interest rate issues in the future? Like, there's so much content that we actually have. Most firms lack the thoughtfulness around deploying that content out to their clients. And it's just a little bit of a missing link. And we're stoked to be part of some of that connection in the industry, but I'm really encouraged by a few modern brands out there that are starting to think about doing that.
We are definitely on our way, so I'd have to agree with you there, but appreciate you indulging me. But I do want to dive into our first segment and the reason why we're here. And I call this segment Stats All Folks. And you recently produced research around the state of the CRM, indicating that 87% of firms are using either Salesforce or Dynamics. But with CRM search rates declining year over year, have these providers finally figured out how to capture the needs of growing wealth management firms? What's going on?
So the stats come from one of the things we built 6 years ago is something called the WealthTech Executive Forum. It's kind of like a closed research group of the industry's top CTOs and COOs. So who has the decision-making authority and spending authority at wealth management firms? Kind of how are they thinking? And they all collaborate and share their perspectives on things that we produce research for them specifically. We publish some more broadly, but most of the research we keep to the group. But when we asked, this is the third time we've done that survey. We did it first in 2019, again in 2022, and then now in 24. When we asked questions in 21, are you thinking about leaving your CRM or going after a new CRM? And the number was pretty high, like somewhere around a quarter. And when we asked it again in 24, fewer firms were really interested in getting a new CRM. And so I think the decline in people looking for a different provider kind of has, I think when we asked the question in more detail from a contextual standpoint, has more to do with like, yeah, we think we found it and we're just maximizing. There's nothing better out there than we've currently got. And also in 2-3 years ago, there were more ancillary sort of also ran CRMs. Largely Microsoft and Salesforce have gobbled up the market at this point. I think like 87% I think are currently on one of those two. But I don't think, to answer the real part of the question, like, I don't think CRM providers have really figured out how to address wealth management. What wealth management firms are getting smart on, this is not a knock on CRM firms at all, is that just licensing a CRM doesn't get you automation, doesn't get you connection with your clients. It doesn't get you kind of the things you thought you were going to get with a CRM. That's why there's actually a really low satisfaction number in terms of that. And I think we'll talk about what causes satisfaction later. But like the what the wealth firms have realized is that the CRM workflow process experience is really up to them, and that's where tech didn't figure it out. But I think smart CTOs and CEOs are starting to figure that out.
Well, you mentioned satisfaction, and look, it's no secret that firms have historically been unsatisfied with the effectiveness of their CRM, and at least that sentiment seems to be changing. But what do you see driving that increase in satisfaction, if any?
Yeah, maturity for sure. I think that you've also got a more mature, in 24, you've got a more mature wealth management industry where leaders and technologists at wealth firms are just getting really better. They're getting better at thinking about technology and spending money on technology and getting better outcomes. Vendors have gotten better as well. But the satisfaction numbers always really kind of threw us off. I know that people grumble about their CRM, but we ask an NPS like question for levels of satisfaction, which if you're not familiar with NPS, it's sort of on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are you with a certain thing? Generally speaking, those that answer 9 and 10 are called your promoters. They're like really satisfied, and they're satisfied enough that they often say nice things about you. And if they're a 0 to 6, they're effectively detractors, and they'll generally say bad things about you. And it's sort of a way to find out sentiment, but more importantly, how public and vociferous is some of that sentiment. Every time we've done the survey, this is our 3rd time, it's always been negative, but it's really negative. It's like negative 30s and 40s now. And it's a little bit back. It's a little better than it was in 20 and 22, but it's still pretty bad. And when we look at correlations in the data between those that are truly satisfied, even those that are like 7s and 8s, which we call kind of the meh category, like meh, 7 and 8.
It's fine.
Like, meh, I'm not really satisfied, but meh. Is the correlation between satisfied wealth firms, it really has to do with the maturity of their workflow and the maturity of how they envision and understand and expect advisors and clients to interact in really sort of myopic transactional moments. When firms really dig into the specifics of that, they generally are pretty satisfied because CRMs are great at helping facilitate repeated transactional processes with clients. But what we really see a lot of, we still see, is people are really frustrated because they thought they were getting that when they bought the CRM. Right? They got the CRM, like it's got workflow and it has the ability to produce workflow, but your workflow is different than someone else's workflow, is different than someone else's workflow. And so you've got to really spend time, and unfortunately, in almost every case, more money on determining what that workflow should be, and then getting it configured into your CRM. And that leap more people have done. So we're seeing a slight uptick in satisfaction, but it's still a driver of dissatisfaction for those that haven't.
And even though satisfaction is up, your research indicated that 43% of firms surveyed are still frustrated with their CRM. So what's on the wish list then for advisors, when it comes to CRM, what are they looking for to ultimately reduce that friction?
Yeah. So the number one thing people want is integration. And of the integration points that they're most in need of, and this is one of those just frustrating things that we try to explain, why, but it's also unfortunate that it happens, is integration into your custodian platform, right? If I have a client, and Shannon is my client, and Shannon has 8 sub accounts, all of which invested in SMAs and a few mutual funds and a couple of different registration types, and I want to open up a new sub account for a SMID strategy that I'm adding to Shannon's portfolio, and I'm at Fidelity, or I'm at Pershing, or I'm at Schwab, I want to be able just to click a button in my CRM and that sucker gets opened up, right? Like, why can't I just open up an account automatically? Why do I have to go through paperwork, and there's another site I got to go? Like, why can't someone solve this? That is still, by and large, the number one frustration, is that lack of integration is there. I mean, people point to their CRM provider as the blocker for why that hasn't happened. I can tell we have, so I love being like where we are in the industry, we can kind of see all the pieces. It has less to do with the CRM company, and it has more to do with the nature of the custodian business, that you have a certain regulatory requirement to validate and check on certain pieces of information, regardless of whether your RIA client has claimed to have already checked that box. Like, there is an ownership by the custodian to also do that. So just intrinsically from a compliance standpoint slows some things down. I think it's happening better. There's better, faster ways that it's happened. It just doesn't come along as quickly as people have wanted it to. But I don't blame anybody specifically. It's just sort of the nature of our regulatory environment where people do have to kind of check on things.
No, absolutely. And I feel like integration has really become that dirty four-letter word in our industry, along with probably data and growth at this point. But in all seriousness, it's pretty clear that integrations correlate with satisfaction. So what are you seeing are the most valuable integrations firms, currently have in place, and what makes them so valuable? Obviously, the wish list is custodial workflows, but what is working right now?
Yeah, great question. So it's just an amazing industry or firm level divides that we see. It's almost like, religious, not a religious divide necessarily, but maybe it's a little bit over the top. But firms using their CRM and viewing the value of their CRM as an operations tool will say they want deeper custodial performance reporting, portfolio construction, planning, rebalancing type tech, the internal tech. That's what they'll say, like, integration needs to be internal because we're going to process faster with fewer clicks on keyboards, just better data quality. It's like a lower negative impact to clients by getting the data wrong, or a lower cost of running the firm because we can automate things quicker without keystroking and spending time, or we can move faster so that we can accrue fees quicker on an account if we're bringing money in, et cetera. That's like one camp, that CRM is an operations efficiency tool. There's another camp, which, by the way, that first camp is the majority. Like, most people think about their CRM as an operations tool.
Sure.
The other camp is, what integrations can my CRM help me that will deepen my relationship with my client, the end investor? So that's like content, wallet share size, life events. There are things around like, what is my client going through? What are the top 10 things they're worried about? What should I be sending to them from a content standpoint? What should I be talking about when I call them about for our quarterly meeting? Like, what goes into that conversation, and how do those people engage with me? There's dramatically different things that we're asking one technology to do. And the religious difference is that you either are an operations type automation firm, or you're generally a outward facing client experience one. We've seen some that do a good job of mixing them, but we'll walk in and within 5 minutes, I could tell you what type of firm you are by, like, what's your integrations? They're like, oh, HubSpot and our content library. I'm like, yep, I know. I can tell what you don't have, and I can probably guess what you do have. And likewise, if they say like, oh, we've integrated into Orion, we got an Adapar integration, and I'm like, got it. You need some help on the marketing side. So that's kind of a silly answer to it, but the integrations really depend on the type of firm, and we believe that both are really valid. You got to automate, you got to do things faster. The cost of labor is high, but far too many firms are foregoing the client experience side, the side where they're tracking how people feel and where they are in their lives and how to be more meaningful and relevant to them. We want to see more of that.
And how have you seen the role of the CRM change within wealth management? Because one of the many rewarding aspects of my job is having access to some of the top CTOs in the industry and picking their brains on what keeps them up at night. And there's this constant debate of how much information you should actually be loading into the CRM, what's actually useful. Even in the cohorts we put together, folks are, using passphrases and storing that within the CRM to try to mitigate cyber issues. And so it feels like while the CRM has always kind of been the central hub, the role has changed over the years, if you will.
Yeah. So the answer partly depends on the size of firm you are. If you are, your rough numbers, if you're $1 billion to $2 billion, you're reaching the state where the CRM probably shouldn't be the repository for all your information. What I mean by that is that CRMs are typically really good last stops on the railroad, right? Like, they're designed to hoover up information and make it visible in their platform. There are integrations with that, but it is generally seen as like, I have all the information, I'm going to send it to here, here, and here. And where it becomes limiting for firms with over 2 billion, roughly 2 billion in assets, is that there are going to be an increasing number of technologies you're going to want to work with, and increasing numbers of questions you're going to want to ask of your data, upon which the CRM is just not suited for. And if all your data is in the CRM and you want to ask, what were the last 5 new business acquisitions, if we're working with like, if our primary client is like a working wealthy business owner, how did we, what were the first 90 days of those experiences, and how more profitable were those than something else? Something about profitability, engagement, upon which the CRM might not have all that information and have no dashboard for it. You're kind of left to never answer that question. So we'll see people try to get data out of the CRM and go to a business, like a BI tool, like there's a bunch of them. And as you get bigger, the CRM's ability to real-time integrate with different technologies becomes really a stumbling block. And we see firms either, if they're just starting the journey with CRM, we often encourage them, hey, build the data architecture so that the CRM feeds off the data, and that data is a sort of separate, inviolatable thing. In fact, you can actually swap out your CRM in 10 years if you want to, but that data becomes the core, and you can build your own integrations into custodial interfaces and different upstream, downstream technologies, and you sort of relieve the CRM of the job of having to be everything to everybody, which is impossible.
Sure. And I'm sure you've seen this before too. A lot of conversations come up within firms around change management and tech adoption. So even beyond the CRM, what advice do you give firms looking to implement new solutions, or really ones that need help with, say, buy-in?
Yeah. So, buy-in is a critical one, adoption and buy-in. So the secret sauce, like the magic secret bullet to spending money on technology, is spend money where it means something to your business, right? And it sounds so commonsensical, like, yeah, if you're a planning-based company and you make most of your money and win most of your clients because of the way you approach planning, or you've got a specific focus on, second generation wealth and how to realize impact in their world and sort of grow that wealth, but also be an emerging entrepreneur with whatever the shtick is that firm has, the spend on technology, the best dollar you spend is one that widens the gap between you and your competition in that way, and deepens the relationships that the clients have built with you, that because you were a certain type of a firm. So that means spending money where it matters and where you're different from your competitors, because that much extra difference makes you stand out more, makes the people that have decided to work with you happier that they're working with you still. And it's more like, I know it sounds like a hokey kind of introvert, like a Rorschach test for a wealth firm, but nowhere near enough firms do this. They just spend money because someone else is spending it. Good salesperson came in from some analytics tool, and like they got this hodgepodge of shiny objects, and they're like, I don't know, this doesn't feel, they spent a lot of money. I'm not getting buy-in. I'm not getting buy-in from my team, and I'm not really getting the ROI on the investment. When you invest in tech that amplifies who you are, the buy-in from advisors and operations teams actually comes with it, because you're just helping them be a better version of themselves. The number of massive projects, even massively like huge $100+ billion wealth firms, are guilty of this, where they try to make a cultural change or a client experience change by bringing in new technology. It's in hindsight, it's laughable. Like, of course, no one's going to just change how they work and why they wake up in the morning, how they feel about being who they are as an advisor, because they've got a new tool. But a lot of firms will do that, right? We want to be a planning organization. So here's the planning tool. Wow, no one's using the planning tool. Must be a bad planning tool. Like, no, not a bad planning tool. It's you didn't lead that change. You tried to lead a change with technology, and those are almost always destined to fail. You got to lead change with a business change, hopefully one that was reflective of the value proposition of the people that work at your firm. Once you do that, once you have that in hand, the tech just enables the change. It's actually much more adoptable.
That makes absolute sense. So great advice. But it is actually time for segment 2 of this episode, Doug, which I call Ask Us Anything. So want to keep the
Oh boy.
conversation going around the CRM. Yes, you get put in the hot seat. So I've gone out to the social universe and asked them to submit questions they want answered by you. And we certainly had a few folks slide into the DMs this week. The first question we got was, I would love to hear a take on how much firms are using CRM for prospecting versus client insights. And for larger firms, how much do advisors lean on the tool versus marketers?
Yeah, that's kind of goes to that comment about like you either are an operational company CRM or you are a sales company CRM. So we're not seeing so universally, this is like advisor psychology 101. We're not seeing a lot of advisors putting prospects, real early stage prospects into the CRM. Part of that is kind of makes sense. Like if you put a prospect in, someone's going to ask you where you are with that prospect. It could be someone's going to sell their business in 5 years, and you're going to track them. And when they sell their business, then they become a client. I don't want to spend 5 years explaining to someone why that person's not a client, right? Like, so there's a little bit of like sales leadership that the vast majority of wealth firms don't have great sales business development leadership. And so we're not seeing it necessarily being used for prospect tracking. Now we are seeing firms very effectively use sort of funnel widening techniques like SEO is actually a really, if done right, there are a couple of well-known wealth firms that are doing a phenomenal job managing SEO or COI management or sort of list buying and or approaching cohorts of humans to try to sort of build out a organic or sort of a partnership COI methodology to get names in. CRMs are great for that when you have a list and sort of processing through that list. And so we do see firms do that. I would maybe guess maybe only a quarter of the wealth firms. We did another research study in February that looked at organic growth and kind of how people are achieving it. So maybe only a quarter are really good. On the marketing integration side, it's just starting to come out now. I think that's where, truth be told, that's where F2 really is aiming to the end of this year and into next year, is to be much better for our clients at connecting their content, their content, sort of research content and branding and marketing content with the CRM, with the distribution mechanisms like email, social, even like geofencing specific like stadiums or like physical locations, so that like Google ad space is now showing up for your firm. So there's a lot of really cool ways to do that. Our job at F2 is not just to talk about it. We actually want to go content plus the automation and the integration. So we're betting on that. I think a lot of other folks in the industry are betting on organic growth in 25, and that the CRM is like the pivot point for that type of organic growth.
Well, I think too, the marketing tools and the MarTech that's out there have also struggled to really integrate with CRM. So I am hopeful that we can get that right here soon.
Yeah. It's on that point, it's really interesting. If you look at the tech stacks within mid-sized wealth firms, what has happened historically, the marketers have had their own technology, and then the wealth and advisory people have had their own technology. It's wild to see that within four walls of a firm, you've got standalone MarTech that is like content distribution, branding, the PowerPoint presentations, and the sort of the research content is all sort of stored in one place, and it's as if they're two different companies. The performance reporting and the KYC information and the custodial files and the statements and all the legal docs totally separate, and they need to come together. That's going to solve a lot of the problem.
Yes, it is. And last question we got, from a CTO perspective, what has changed the most since you started in the industry?
Wow. So I would love for this to be like my own. But there's a guy who worked at one of our clients named Tom Roop, and Tom told me over dinner one night. Tom told me he's like, Doug, you've got a good business. He's like back in the first before the first financial crisis, the financial crisis in 09 and 10, two roles in corporate America, corporate wealth management, lived in the basement, and they were the technology person, the compliance person, like. No one gave them a fancy office. We barely had, a light over their head to do their job. And it's like, and then in 2010 and 11, the compliance person like got in the elevator and got an office on the top floor, right? Like that was a big role. Now the compliance person's got windows and a staff, and it's critical that that compliance person has like visibility. It's important. And then COVID happened, and then like the CTO got the same elevator pass up to the top floor, right? Like people need to engage digitally. We need to have information security. We have redundancy. and the CTO now is really important. So I would say since I started in the industry, the business criticality of technical leadership that truly understands the nature of the business, how they make money, how they compete, how they grow, how they retain regulatory levels, but also all the technology side of change, keeping up with norms, competition, client experience, vendors. Like the confluence of those things in an individual is so important to the success of a firm that even when I started F2 8 years ago, like I probably didn't I didn't even think it was going to be this important in 8 years. It's incredibly important to firms. So that CTO's criticality to the business is the number one thing I think is changed the most.
And I think it's you who wrote about too that very soon we're going to see CTOs stepping into, CEO, roles, managing directors, and have them really drive the vision and take the business into the future. So I think that's going to happen.
Natalie Wolfson, by the way, Natalie would cringe if she ever listened to this podcast. And Natalie's one of the most amazing people I've ever met. But one of like an incredibly intelligent, not a technologist, but man, I know a lot of technologists that she could run laps around, right? Just in terms of her way her brain works. Running Orion, right? Like, wow, that's one example of where that's already happened. I think we're starting to see more and more of that, where COOs and CTOs are, they really can get things done and can chart the course. So yeah, I probably made that call. I think that was my prediction going into 23, that we were going to see like a CTO ascend to CEO. Didn't quite happen in 23, but it'll happen.
Any day now. Well, shout out to Natalie. I completely agree. Brilliant mind, and definitely, love Eric Clark, but happy to see Orion in good hands and, taking them into the future. Well, Doug, I appreciate you being put on the spot and of course your insightful answers, but we've come to our final and what might be my favorite segment that I affectionately call Stack It or Whack It. So I'm going to throw out a few technologies. Be warned, they are not always necessarily WealthTech related, and sometimes they're random thoughts, especially if I know you. And you tell me if they are worth the hype, essentially stack it, AKA use it, or whack it, AKA lose it. So
love it. Let's go. I got my buzzer.
Even better.
Like to buy a vowel. Can I buy a vowel before we go? Yeah,
no? Certainly. And I have t-shirts for this. Trust me, the whole thing. It's a whole thing. All right. First one I got for you. Stack or whack, client journey maps.
Oh, stack for sure.
Love a good
if you
client
don't know how
map.
oh, totally critical.
All right. And the second one I have for you, this is loaded. A lot of feelings around this right now, but PE and wealth management.
Oh boy. So man, how to answer this one in not a self-serving manner. I'm gonna stack it. I'm gonna stack it because it's giving firms the capital to go be hyper competitive. And granted, like a significant percentage of my clients are PE backed, so it helps F2, but the way it's pushing the industry forward and creating competition from like the middle of the pack. I love that. So stack it for sure.
All right. 2 for 2 on Stack It. Well, Doug, it has been an absolute pleasure getting to know you. And thank you for all your insights today. Feel free to tell listeners where they can find out more about you, what you're working on at F2 Strategy, what's on the roadmap, or any other call to action.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shannon, for having me, and look forward to feedback on this one.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to drop a website or any roadmap things that are happening.
Yeah, hit us up. So if you're not, the easiest way to connect with F2 is probably LinkedIn. Just follow us on LinkedIn. We publish our research content, always designed to make advisors and advisory business just smarter. It's not salesy at all. So our findings, our research, all designed for easy digestion from any wealth firm of any size. Follow us there. I think we've got a lot more coming out at the end of this year. We acquired that Sky marketing team, so now we have that whole MarTech offering at F2, and so a lot of our content increasingly is just how to win and how to grow by using technology. So we're really excited about all that work coming out. We're often at a lot of conferences like WealthStack, so check us out on stage there as well. And then, yeah, our website also has a link to a monthly newsletter. Like newsletters sound like something my grandmother would do, and I get that that sounds like the least technical thing ever, but it is actually a we curate the month's worth of news, like what's happening, so that if you want just one place where like a lot of things are all curated for you, it's a really easy way just to get that sent directly into your inbox. You don't have to click or view anything. You just get it. And so we've got hundreds and hundreds of people subscribe to that, and they give us good feedback. So check that out.
Fantastic. And I can certainly attest, I read all of your research articles. I know you contribute to wealthmanagement.com and we appreciate it. So shout out to F2 because everything I read, and like I said, selfishly, I always learn something from you. So keep fighting the good fight because it is extremely important to our industry and very helpful. So certainly check out F2's content if you get a chance. And be sure to like and subscribe to the WealthStack podcast on all major podcasting platforms and follow all things WealthStack on wealthmanagement.com, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And like Doug said, if you want the in-person WealthStack experience, you can join us in June on the 9th through the 12th. We are now moving to Boca Raton Resort, and we hope to see you there at Wealth Management Edge. Thank you all for tuning in.